Very good. So the first order of new business is the J. Downigan Company allocation request. Seth?
Yes, I'm going to pause about 5 seconds. I found out the magic solution to get us out to YouTube, so we'll be good. Here
I noticed it says meeting is now live streaming
yes,
on YouTube.
that should come up. What happens is it takes a moment to get out to YouTube, and I have to turn the volume off on the YouTube side, or else we get feedback.
Okay.
I'm sure the public is able to see this.
Allocation request.
Now I'm hearing an echo or a.
There we go. Yes, the J. Downigan allocation driven initiative, as you can see in the staff report. So, as was just mentioned in announcements by Commissioner Ratigan, the Town Commission did approve and did adopt the allocation plan and the associated allocation list, which gives allocation to the properties on that list until December 31st, 2023. And of course, at one point back in probably June, this body extended the allocation for Jay Downigan's property at his request. He was making the request from the end of this year, 2020, to the end of 2021, December 31st to be specific. And now that we have those in place and a few other things have transpired since then, we've acknowledged that this property has been an active work for some time trying to find a use and an activity on this property, and they've been working for a little bit, as I noted. So you'll see in my staff report, this request is for an additional 2 years for this property itself. And the current capacity for the property in terms of sewer capacity is about 12,753 gallons. The reason that this extension is being considered at this point in time by staff for this property is the only property in town that's part of a master plan commercial site development. It's one of the last few remaining commercial and nearly site pad ready development locations. All their sites in the town would require some amount of redevelopment. I have no clue where that's coming from.
I bet you it's Mr. Headphone Man.
I think. Oh my God, this is a disaster.
Someone's phone?
Who's like
Yours.
picking up? This is like crazy.
Who likes smooth jazz? Raise your hand.
There you go. Not sure who did what, but there we go. Thank you all. So, in light of all that, I'm going to start over. It's the only property in town as part of master plan commercial site plan, which you can see in the attachment. It's one of the last few commercial sites in the town that's nearly pad ready. All other sites would need to be redeveloped. This property is located in the target investment zone, which is defined by the 2011 master plan as an area of interest by the town commission to encourage some development in this area. A highly visible property in the commercial core of downtown. Allows the property owner some time to attract the type of end user that may be compatible with the village center vision. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight is these set of unique circumstances that apply to this property, and maybe more time to figure out potentially a vision that works with the town and for the property owner. There's no guarantee on either party side that may happen, but there's a potential thought process that maybe could work towards such an initiative. The next paragraph, down essentially talks about the approval that the town commission gave that I just recently noted. you know, really the second paragraph there just really talks about the fact that this is it listed above, a unique site, but it's going to take a little bit of the right investor. You know, this isn't a redevelopment. We can buy the property and just kind of rehab it and get in at a quote unquote lower cost. I mean, it's going to be full site development. You're going to be putting in, you know, curbs, sidewalks, paved parking areas, a brand new building. You know, it's a challenge to market because you have to meet the right market niche in order to develop this site and do from ground up. You know, again, you know, the allocation has been provided. You know, there's an opportunity here to maybe work with the property owner to come to some sort of solution with this. You know, the allocation is provided for at the wastewater treatment plant, so it's not like we're really changing the dynamic significantly in that regard. We're just providing a couple extra years. As I noted at the prior meeting, there are safety valves built into the allocation plan, which gives us a little bit of mechanism to this. You know, and again, if we can find something that meets the town's vision, that'd be a great opportunity for the community. And that's really where we come down to on the extension request. It's a very unique property in terms of market aspect and an end user. It's visible in our community. It provides us time to work with everyone. And, you know, we have capacity for this. And we might be able to find something that achieves our desired results. So that's the nature of this request. It's being provided by the staff and not the applicant themselves, or the property owner, I should say more appropriately.
Yeah, my only concern is the last plan that they provided on with the gas station. I mean, not only did the town people really respond to that pretty strongly in the negative, but in my own mind, there were just so many negatives. Is there a way to link the 3-year extension to seeing some kind of movement and some kind of deliverables that look the owner of the property is actually trying to find feasible alternatives?
When you mean, well, first of all, they've got the 3-year allocation now, and we're looking to extend it another 2 years. And when you mean link that, what are you specifically referring to, linking what two components?
Yes, so I don't know if it's even in the code, so I may be asking for something that doesn't exist. But
Well,
the idea of giving someone that kind of extension, the reasons that you had delineated really have to do with the importance of the property. You know, the fact that the current owner has acted in good faith in many respects, that it's an important piece of property. I don't get the sense that really that Donegan is, I don't know how much work he's done to find a business for that property that really suits the needs of the town. And so is there any way to link extension of the water rights to some kind of requirement on the part of the owner of the property to check in and show us a good faith effort?
I'll answer that a little bit. There's nothing in the code that is going to allow that, but let me elaborate on the factors that the pending plan could be done with the allocation that's already been granted. And so the staff has recognized, and we've had discussions with their attorney, the applicant's attorney, that the longer than allocation is concrete for the developer, the more options they have. Because it has always been said that if we're going to lose the allocation, we're going to need to build something, just anything, so we don't lose it. And so while I don't think it's actually necessary to do the linking, I think by giving an increased allocation time, it will be linked, because they'll realize now we don't have to rush. We can work with the town. And as the town manager said, that's what we've expressed the willing to do, is to work with them to say, all right, the pressure's off. And I think that was one of the things, I know our group has talked about it in the past, is that when you're dealing with a commercial project like the one we're talking about, our marquee project, that doesn't happen like somebody building a house. And it's more unique than somebody building a house, because a house is a house is a house. It might depend on where it is, but this is the only commercial project in your commercial area like that. So to get through a 1.5 year review, that's after you line up a tenant, after you do the feasibility, you're up against the 3 years right then. And so we felt that we want to give everybody breathing room, and that it'll play out from there, I think, the way you're talking about.
Okay, thanks. That's a good clarification.
I remember when when Donegan has been up in front before, it's almost like he's putting together plans because he has to keep the allocation. And he's doing what he can, but it really makes sense that we give him more time. He can get more feedback, be a little bit more collaborative, and find something that works for everybody.
I agree with you, Brian.
Yep, totally agree. I remember before, like maybe it was 3 or 4 years ago, he came to town and proposed just building a shell building just to keep his allocations. And we granted him an extension. And I think, why rush it? Why not grant the extensions? I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And it's, I think we all agree at some point, whatever gets built there, whether it's built by Donegan or someone that buys the property, we want to have, like there's going to need to be water there. So it seems like to keep a placeholder there makes sense.
I agree as well. I think it makes sense to extend so we can have a collaborative process, and he can find tenants that might work well with the town's vision, the town center vision.
Sounds like we have a pretty good, we're all pretty well aligned on this. Anybody want to make a motion somewhere?
Make a motion to extend the sewer allocation from December 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025 for the property at the corner of Wooten and Fisher Avenue.
I'll second that.
Sounds good. All in favor? Aye.
Hey,
Aye.
Very good. And it's funny, we talked about doing this a few years ago. And I remember at the time, Cal had mentioned, he just, who knows what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years, let's keep it specific. But we weren't really, I don't think, realizing the restrictions you're putting on to make them keep coming back with plans just to keep their allocation. So I think we made a good step here. Sorry, I have to go back to my agenda. I think there's it's a zoning text amendment, right?
For the swimming pools.
The swimming pools. Seth, do you want to get going on that?
Yes. All right. So this is a zoning text amendment, and it also has an amendment to the town code as well. And this is for swimming pools. As I mentioned last month, there's been some modest confusion about whether a swimming pool is considered an accessory structure or a principal because it's not clear. And as I noted, the principal structures are quite excessive. The principal setbacks are very excessive for a pool standard. In regards to a accessory structure, it seemed a little too much. A little too limited in terms of the amount of setbacks in that regard. So one's too little, one's too much, trying to find the sort of Goldilocks, get to the right point sort of approach. So what I did is draft an amendment on this, and this amendment doesn't use either the principal or the current accessory structure. It defines one specifically for swimming pools itself. So much of the language is already in the code, and there's very little change to this. So I did make a change to section 13 of the zoning ordinance. Currently it's called general provision. I included supplemental regulations, which is common nomenclature in zoning ordinances, and then general provisions. As we flip through here, as we flip through here, you'll come to section M. This is where I clarified the standards for a swimming pool. And if you get to M and I sent out an amended version just yesterday because I added another small section. But when you get to M, really number one is where I dealt with the setback related issues. So the principal element here that's the biggest change is that the setbacks for a swimming pool will be 8 feet from the side and rear yard. And when I mean swimming pool, it's actually where the water itself begins, which is sort of addressed further below in that element. So side and rear yard, 8 feet. I did note there's always a question about, does the decking patio material have to be also 8 feet over, because it's might be considered attached and part of the pool. What I did is said essentially no, that material that is essentially non-combustible can be and encroach further within that 8 feet when it's attached to the pool. So the pool water edge is 8 feet over. The concrete pad essentially can go more or less to the property line in that regard. It just keeps the use itself, which is the pool, 8 feet away. And that's what I did for that. Then I said for wood or composite or other material that's a little bit potentially flammable, I kept a 5-foot buffer from the property line. Because at the end of the day, one of the principal things that you all deal with is life, safe, health and public welfare, right? So if you got a deck that's wood or can be flammable and it goes right to the property line, there's no real distance separation. That means if 2 people built a deck side by side on property line that's not attached to the home, that's a key issue, not attached to the home, it's just surrounding the pool that are both wood, at least there's a 10-foot separation in case one caught on fire and you had to have fire support come in. It's not burning deck to deck and spreading from property to property. So that's why I created 5 feet from the side or rear yard for these decks that surround the pool that are wood composite material that are combustible. So that's really the change. Essentially, the rest is pretty much as the code is nearly written. There's some minor changes, but nothing that I consider significantly policy change type activity in that regard. What I did add in here is what I did add was number 7 in here, which also is in the town code somewhere else. I wanted to bring them all together. It's basically number 7 under the new standard is you have to get a permit from the town to discharge your pool into a natural drainage way or into a storm drain. We want to make sure that's not going to one of our ponds and creating an adverse effect with that as well. I think I just reiterated that you have to get a Montgomery County building permit, so that's just built in there. That's acknowledged as well, and then an abandonment element to the pool. If you abandon it for more than 24 months, it may need to be taken down. So that's really the big change to that. I added a definition to the zoning ordinance on swimming pools. We've got a definition of private and more or less public swimming pool, but there was nothing really defining what the structure of a swimming pool consisted of or what defined a swimming pool. If you keep flipping the pages a little bit, basically you see red lines all the way through the current existing section of 4.2 of the town code. So we were amending the zoning ordinance prior. Now we're amending the town code because we removed the language from the town code, inserted in the zoning ordinance. But it is section 4.3, and what follows section 4.3 is what follows 4.2 is a 4.3. So instead of going and renumbering the whole thing, we'll just make 4.2 reserved. If we ever need this section, we can make use of it. So that is the text amendment on the pools. I think it provides a healthy balance to what we're trying to achieve with the desire for residents to have, pools that have a non-excessive setback, but actually for the adjacent properties, it's not too close to their property either. So it sort of strikes that balance.
So I have a question for you, Seth, and Jay at the same time. By moving from code to zone, does it actually change any of the legal processes or adjudication processes?
It'll still be exactly the same. There'll be no net change. And to clarify that, clearly the town code, when you put something in the town code, it applies across the board no matter what. And so when you put things in the zoning ordinance, you got to make sure if you want it to apply to all zones, that you're pretty specific about that to make sure that nobody tries to say, well, does this apply to a certain zone? Which in this case would be a little preposterous, but you may get that question. So when you look at section M, its title heading, the subsection, it specifically states that this shall apply to all zoning districts. So there's no procedural change in how you get the permit and or where it applies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seth, I have two questions. My first question is with the swimming pool setback. As I read it, I don't find anywhere that it says that it's the setback is to the water's edge. Is that just kind of implied, or did I miss it somewhere?
It's a reasonable statement. In some ways, we'll make it explicit so it's clear. I think that's totally reasonable. It's semi-implied by the nature of the decking material, but let's clean this up, because what you don't want is some reason somebody making an interpretation, even though it's pretty clear about C and D. You know, it's allowed for it, so one would presume that that means it's to the water's edge. But let's just make that clear, and I'll add that in.
Okay.
And I'll add in, but you'll have to have a motion clearly.
Okay. And then my other question is, because I see hot tubs and things like that are included as a swimming pool. But a lot of people I know have hot tubs that are in decks that are attached to their homes. Does that need something to spell out how that works, or how far that needs to be, or criteria for that?
No, because once a deck is attached to a home,
Mhm.
the deck has to meet the principal setbacks. Again, it's that life, safety, health, and welfare is that if a home catches on fire, the deck is very likely to catch as well. So you want the deck to meet the principal setbacks. So again, it's not only, convenience that you don't overbuild your yard with one large deck and you look across your neighbors, but it's also the fact that if there's a fire, you don't want it to basically your whole backyard on fire potentially. So that's why anything attached to the home is almost nearly universally required to be within the principal setbacks.
And so in that case, it's like
It'll be actually much further in than the 8 feet.
and that it probably goes to answer this question too. I'm guessing like a driveway or like a concrete or asphalt driveway would be attached to the house theoretically.
It is theoretically, and it's always a good question. And that is one of those things where I've always interpreted in my background as a zoning administrator and in the planning and zoning realm is that, if you're allowed to have a concrete driveway attached all the way to your house and up to the property line, a concrete patio is not as much of an issue, and I don't really regulate it the same as I would like a deck structure, in that regard. I don't even think we require a building permit, for example, for just a concrete pad. You can go and pour one. Where you do, once you start building a structure that is off the ground, even if it's 4 inches and it's a wood plane deck, that's when you need a building permit. So that's kind of always how I've derived the difference.
Makes
Is there
sense.
any concern about a concrete pad built all the way out to the property line in terms of potential water runoff and sort of logging, getting all log thick?
We do have a maximum impervious area as well in the code. So there is some sort of built-in buffer, so to speak, but it is possible that your impervious area that you're counting for includes part of your pool that does abut your adjacent property owners, abuts to the property. This is one of those things where it certainly can happen. I don't see it happen a lot. If we wanted to say it should be off the property line at least a foot, that's fine. But most people don't want to be on their neighbors, but you know, there's an exception to every rule. That's why we have the regulations we do.
I don't think that, I think you could probably interfere with drainage, backhoe drainage, whether you're a foot off your own property line or 8 feet or right up against it, you could still effectively compromise a drainage swale. So I don't think that the relative distance to the property line makes much difference.
In terms of the concrete patio.
Right. Impervious surface.
Yeah.
So what we have in front of us, Martin, do you have anything? You haven't mentioned anything yet.
No, I don't. I think Seth just answered any questions I had. So, how Seth, how does this work? Do you have to amend the document?
You're talking about amending the code?
Well,
Well-
the motion would have to include the verbiage for the water's edge clarification.
Right.
Yes, so section M1 setbacks, we're asking for more clarification for defining the edge of the pool, whether it's the water's edge or the concrete edge. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, yes. I think you can make a motion to adopt these proposed changes as written with the change that the setback applies to wherever the water is at.
So right now, somebody just needs to say that they would make a motion to what Seth just said.
Right.
So
You don't have to go through it, Kevin.
I would make a motion to recommend the edits to section 13 in the code, section M, and then section 1 setbacks. More clarification needs to be added for defining water's edge and where that setback is. Does that sound very lengthy? A lot of words?
Yeah.
It's fine. One thing that I need to provide to you is that this is a recommendation to the town commission. So we need to make the recommendation to town commission. If you're happy and trust that I can do this water's edge thing right, unless you want me to bring it back next month. But otherwise, it's a recommendation to the town commission.
So can I second what Kevin said?
And call
Yeah.
it a recommendation to the town commission.
That's the way I'm writing it all in the minutes, so it'll all be perfect when it's done.
Thank you.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Seth, was there any public comment that you know of?
There was no public comment at all. Nobody had requested to speak before you all.
No one
And
wants to talk about swimming pool setbacks?
I apologize for the sporadicness of what happened with this meeting. We got off to a funky start. It kind of kept
It's
going.
7:44 and we're wrapping up,
Yeah.
Seth. This is great.
Yeah, beautiful.
I do. Martin did mention earlier he didn't have anything to announce except that they,
might be something Jay was,
yeah, but
Fill him up.
maybe give Jay a chance if there's anything you want to elaborate on.
Well, we've
Earlier.
had 2 closed sessions regarding the ZTAs that were pending and discussions, not necessarily discussions, but correspondence with the applicant and his attorney. And so we've had those kind of things. It's a little too premature to talk about the results, but there was some direction to do research, which is being done and has been done. And, I think things will be more clear in the coming weeks.
And was there any update, from my recollection, there were a couple of things we had been pushed up to the commissioners. Baloo was one of them. Is there any movement on that?
Sure. It's interesting you speak of that. Yes, I just placed that on the agenda. In that regard, you all made a motion earlier this year to approve the concept plan, which resides solely in your domain. So you get to make that approval, which you did, to relinquish and reduce some of the conservation easement area. and that hence allows her potentially the 5 lots she's looking for. Of course, as you all remember, the conservation easement has more acreage than she would be required to have today. So the town commission, being a party to that conservation easement, has to approve a reduction in that easement as described in there. She's still proposing to have more acreage than is required by the current standard. Old standard had more, now requires less. She's meeting that plus additional. So what we worked with at the town commission is trying to find a path forward that works for all parties that are involved. And what we've come down to and what's going to be proposed to the town commission on Monday is essentially that let's, first of all, create an forest bank here in Poolesville. We have some town-owned property that has forest on it, to which we could create a forest bank. Anybody who cannot meet the forestation standards could pay into that, and we would create an easement on our own property to ensure that those forest areas remain forested into the long-term future. Ms. Beaulieu would pay what we historically have known as the forestation fee of 30 cents a square feet of what she's not meeting. It would not be a forest payment in lieu for forestation because that has to go to the state by law. What we would do is make use of that 30 cents a square foot that's not being used and use it for administrative costs to set up our forest bank because there is some cost associated with that. You have to have legal meets and bounds and description of what you're selling off per easement area. So that's the proposal. That would allow the town to create a forest bank in which we could sell other forest easement area. It'd allow Ms. Beaulieu to proceed with her project, and it would ensure that there's kind of a win for a number of parties to the public process. And most importantly is that in the net aspect of everything, there's no loss of forest area in the truest sense. It's just taken from one area and placed into another for perpetuity and insurance. So that's the whole story on this. I know it's a little long, but I want to give overall background. We've had a lot of history on this and discussion with it. So that's where it is before the town commission.
That's perfectly reasonable to me.
So that's where we're at. And again, we already mentioned the town commission approved the allocation plan. So there's some of the things you had moved up to that body.
I think that that's all that I can remember. It's been kind of sporadic, with the COVID meeting, not meeting, seeing people, not seeing people. So anybody else have anything for today?
I don't.
Just a shout out for Fair Access. MCPS just awarded a contract for pre-construction services for PHS.
Nice.
So we're pretty excited about that.
Great work, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice.
That pretty much does it, I think.
Yes. Motion to adjourn by anybody?
I mean,
Motion to adjourn the July 15th Planning Commission meeting,
Second.
7:50 p.m.
All in favor?
I.
Hey,
Aye. Have a good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah,
You guys.
thank you.